Hello, everybody. That's to all of you e-learning portal members, as well as those of you watching this on YouTube. My name's Jimmy Smith. Welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. So we are going to be looking at a video, a presentation on wine production for the WSET Diploma. This is the Level 4. So this is focusing on the growing environment, and this is on climate classification, part 1 of 2. So this part is available to everybody via YouTube and on the e-learning portal. Part 2 will only be available on the e-learning portal. Please visit www.winewithjimmy.com if you'd like to find out more and sign up. If you do have any comments or questions or concerns, we'd love to hear them. Please do get in touch. You can do so by commenting on this video on YouTube, getting in touch via social media that you'll see at the bottom of every slide if you are that way inclined, or you can get in touch direct at the Wine with Jimmy website. And don't forget, if you are watching this on the wonderful world of YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. So climate part 1, this is going to be talking about the major climate classification models in order to give us an idea of what the climate of that area will be like. So a region's climate is defined as the annual pattern of temperature and heat, sunlight, rainfall, humidity, and wind that are averaged out over many years. They in fact say something like the general timescale is like 30 years to really gain a type of climate. So the climate does not change from its macroclimate one year to the next. So it won't be maritime one year, then continental, then maritime, and so on. These climates are changes over a period of decades when they transgress to different types of climate, certainly with your warmth patterns. So generally we accept that the Mosel is a cool climate, but actually in the past 10 years or so, there have been a couple of years that have been in the moderate area and even some up towards warm, certainly 2018. Now, averaging that out, it still actually sits it as a cool climate, but recent activity certainly is pointing it towards warming up. So there could be a change afoot for the Mosel, for instance, in Germany. Right, so let's have a look at some of our first slide here. Here we go. So this is actually just a list of the major climate models that we'll talk about for the Level 4 syllabus. So I will go through those. Actually, on this presentation, we will talk about the top 4. So the Huglin Index, the GDD, growing degree days, the mean temperature of the warmest month, that's the mean January-July temperature, and then the growing season temperature. The Köppen's climate classification will be actually discussed on part 2. So what about this then? So temperature, sunlight, and water from rainfall, so precipitation, all have a vital influence on the vine's ability to grow and to ripen grapes, and therefore style and quality of the wines that can be made from that region are also shaped by all of those climatic factors. So for this reason, a number of models of climate classification have been created by very important industry types in different areas around the world to normally focus on their specific zones, but they have also been mapped out across the globe. These models can often help us in the comparison of different global vineyard zones. And this really can give us an idea on the resulting wine that is possible from those areas that they are made successfully. To date, most climate classifications have actually majorly focused on patterns of temperature. So this is our heat. And this is because it is widely accepted as the most important influence on the vine cycle. It really dictates what could be grown where. And then probably secondary rainfall is sometimes integrated into it as well. But it must be noted that these Climate classifications are quite a broad sweep, and they certainly don't take into consideration the very distinctive microclimatic factors, the terroir factors, human influence, for example, that may affect a certain place or a vineyard. So they are more broader scales to give us an indication, not so specific plot to plot. Okay. So first up then, we're going to be talking about degree days, so growing degree days. Now, this was first created in 1944 by Amarine and Winkler. And in fact, the zones are named after the latter, the Winkler zones, which we'll look at in a couple of slides' time. So this model of heat summation during the growing season was originally intended for the vineyards of California. Today, it has actually been adopted around the world with variants as well. Now, it is unlikely to go into too much detail about actually calculating the GDD, but let's just talk about that anyway. So for Celsius, of course, we've got Celsius and Fahrenheit. So with Celsius, you subtract 10. And 10 is the magic number because this is the number which it is assumed that vines will not grow. They need to be above 10 degrees Celsius to grow. So 10 is the magic number here. Subtracting 10 from the average mean temperature of a month in the growing season. So you select a month and then you subtract 10 from the average mean temperature. For Fahrenheit, it is subtracting 50 from that number. So then you multiply it by the number of days in that month. Okay, so far we have subtracting 10 from the average mean temperature of the month of the growing season for Celsius, and then multiplying it by the number of days in that month. And then we would then carry that out for all of the other remaining months. And this would sit in the growing season, remember. So this would be from the 1st of April to the 31st of October, what is considered as the months for the growing season. So once all of those have added up from April to October, those totals, then it gives you some numbers. And here you've actually got a bit of a picture here to show you the Washington State American viticultural areas for the 2016 cumulative GDDs, the growing degree days in the specific AVAs. Now, we have numbers here in brackets next to these. These are actually the GDD days in Fahrenheit. Remember, the number is going to be greater for Fahrenheit. But there is a graph here that shows you that the Fahrenheit is on the left, and then we have the GDD for Celsius on the right. So what it would equate to in Celsius. And you'll see there are a number of AVAs here, quite a few big numbers, things like Red Mountain, for instance. More well-known AVAs like Walla Walla Valley, Yakima Valley, for instance. Both of these lie upon the eastern side of the Cascade Mountains in the rain shadow of the Cascade Mountains. So therefore, we tend to have, of course, much more ability to grow crops here. And certainly for viticulture, you're looking at cumulative GDD, the growing degree days, of around 3,000. So that's quite high. So that's around sort of the number of about 1,700 in terms of Celsius. If you go to the other side of the Cascade Mountains, and this is close to around Seattle, you have Puget Sound, which you'll see the numbers here of degree days are actually in Fahrenheit only around 1,900. So this would equate to somewhere around, let's say around 1,050 in terms of in Celsius. So much lower, as that is right on the Pacific. There are some very interesting wines made here, but it is very cool for the growth of vines. So yes, quite interesting just to show you that in terms of the growing degree days. And then just having a little look at some other pictures as well, just so we understand it with other places. So as a part of the model, the GDDs, so the growing degree days, are actually split into classically 5 zones, 5 areas, but the lower band has actually been separated into 2 bits as well. So the lower band, that's a Winkler Zone 1, is now 1A and 1B. So there are a few sort of differences made for that. This makes data quite easy to use and to communicate. So the climate region, which is known as Winkler Zone 1, this is 1 of 5, is the coolest, whereas Winkler Zone 5 is, of course, the warmest, and in fact, often very hot. But remembering that Zone 1 is split into 1A and 1B. And in terms of your numbers, region 1A is anything that is less than 1,111 degree days. 1B is that number up to about 1,390. And then you've got region 2, which is that number up to about 1670. Then region 3, which is that number up to about 1940. And then region 4, which is the same number up to then about 2,220. So quite distinct. If you'll see here on the right-hand side, that's been symbolized. So you will see here, ignoring the bottom part here, there is actually an additional one here, but I'm going to give you if they just cross this one off for now, but it is pertinent because there are very hot places in the world, but they're just going to cross this one out for now. So Winkler Zone 5 would be, in terms of Celsius, is this one down at the bottom. So let me put, and it's done in the Roman numerals as well. So let me put that there. Okay, so that area there, 2,222, it's often 2,220, somewhere around that number, and greater is a Winkler Zone 5. Then you have this orangey color, which is 1944 to 2,222. This is Winkler Zone 4. Okay, then you have that middle one, that's Winkler Zone 3. Then you have Winkler Zone 2. Then you have Winkler Zone 1. You've got 1. These are basically 1, but I'll just put 1 there for now. They're not actually split correctly into 1A and 1B. But basically, they're your Winkler zone classification. So there is a map of Spain on the right-hand side, and you'll see that really the kind of bluish colors are Winkler Zone 1 zones. So you'll see, I'm just checking that again. Yes, that is correct. So you will see that up here in the Pyrenees, also along the Cantabrian mountain range just here, that would be classified as kind of parts of Zone 1, parts of really Bierzo, a little bit of Galicia is included in here as well, parts of Catalonia where it's the Pyrenees would be Zonal 1. And then you've got more parts here down into Castilla y Leon. Parts of the Basque country are this kind of greenish color, which is a Winkler Zone 2, parts of Galicia as well. Winkler Zone 3 is the yellow, which is rest of green Spain. That's Galicia, Asturias, Cantabria, and the Basque country. Lots of parts of Castilla y Leon here, which is quite a raised high plateau. And little parts here of the Sistema Ibérica as well, the mountain range down here. Winkler Zone 4 would be parts of here of Aragon, parts of Catalonia, parts of mountains around north of Madrid. So the sort of areas where you find the DO of Madrid. So that's that kind of zone here. And then Winkler Zone 5s are going down here in the bottom. So lots of parts of Estremadura, southern parts of Castilla-La Mancha, parts of Valencia, Murcia, and Andalusia. And then it goes into excess of that as well, which is kind of a much hotter zone down in Jerez, for instance, right in the south of Andalusia. So yes, big differences there. And there's another one here on the left as well for the growing degree days in terms of the same Celsius base, but for things like Washington State, Oregon, and then California as well. So you'll see the numbers here quite clearly show that it really is only the Winkler Zone 5, which is in California. There are none in the states above California, like Oregon and Washington. They do go up here, though, to Winkler Zone 2s in some of these areas that are on the right-hand side, the eastern side of the Cascade Mountains. The Cascade Mountains, by the way, are what come down right here. So this was up here. This is Puget Sound, which is very cool. Of course, that's Winkler Zone 1. And then across here, you got some Winkler Zone 2s in the rest of these AVAs in Washington State, for example. This actually keeps going down there as well. Okay, so there are your some degree days there. And so if you can have a look at the next slide as well, some examples of key regions in the world. This is only a few of them, but some examples of what Winkler zone they are. So one of the hottest in the world is known as Jerez de la Frontera. So Jerez de la Frontera is situated in Andalusia, in southern Andalusia. Very, very warm Mediterranean here. And this is actually classified as Winkler Zone 5. Other side of the world, Lodi, and we just saw it in red on that map on the previous map, which is in California. That's Lodi, California, or Winkler Zone 5. Tuscany, Languedoc-Roussillon, and the Napa all fall in at Winkler Zone 4 for the most part. Rioja, Margaret River, Zones 3. Bordeaux, Zone 2. Burgundy, 1B, Winkler Zone 1B, which is basically the upper band of Winkler Zone 1, which is where it's early ripening Vitis vinifera grape varieties. That's the same for Oregon, for example. And of course, Oregon and Burgundy share the similarity of growing Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And then Champagne, 1A, and other places like Sussex in England would be classified as this, parts of Canada as well. 1A is where you find some very early ripening Vitis vinifera and hybrids that are able to produce a crop in such cool conditions. So just some examples there of the actual classifications of the Winkler zones. So next we have the Huglin Index. So this one was created in 1978 by the person of the same name, Huglin, and it uses a very similar formula to the GDD, but it differs in that the calculation takes into account both mean and maximum temperatures and the increased day length experienced at higher latitudes due to the Earth's tilt. And of course, you've got the effect of the longer solar days in summer, for example. So it does take into consideration those things. The index is split into two ranges with the most suitable grape varieties mapped to each range. And it's quite a widely used system in Spain. Here is the same map of Spain. And you'll notice here, because it is actually bringing into consideration other factors, it's not exactly the same as the map that we had previously, which was done in GDD. So here are the ranges of the Huglin Index. You'll see those lower ranges are places like the Pyrenees, again, Cantabria, once again in Castilla and Leon, the mountain ranges north of Madrid, the Sierra de Gredos and those kind of places. Some of the mountains, even in the south, are actually classified here, which wasn't a part of the previous map. We then do have some areas that are kind of in the middle here. So you have Aragon, Catalonia, parts of Castilla and Leon, Galicia, of course, as well, Asturias, Cantabria. And then down in the south, it's a bit more diverse because of the added characteristics taken into place. The similarity would be around Jerez and Andalusia, around Cadiz. But then as you go into the northern parts of Andalusia, which is north of Cordoba and north of places like Granada, you'll actually find that it's a little bit cooler in those zones in terms of the index anyway. So that's quite an important thing to take into consideration. Okay, so that's the Huglin Index. Then we have something called the MJT, which is the mean temperatures of the warmest month. The J actually stands for January and July. So in the northern hemisphere, it's the mean temperature of July. And then in the southern hemisphere, it's the mean temperature of January. And here are some sort of references here in comparison to growing degree days. So region 1, so that is talking about Winkler Zone 1. We've not split it into its A or B, just all encompassing region 1. That's less than 1390 degree days. That's done in Celsius. This will equate for less than 19.8 degrees Celsius in the mean temperature of the warmest month, which for most of these, well, I mean, it's a bit of a mixture, but we are looking at, it's going to be January or July. Grape varieties that this tends to sort of dictate are things like Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay, which are very early ripening, Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, Gewürz, Riesling. And there is a few examples of regions there that this is important for. So Chablis, which of course is North Burgundy, right on the cusp of Champagne. Friuli, which is quite a mountainous influence part of northeast Italy on the border of Slovenia. Tasmania, the island off southeast Australia, of course. Champagne, Marlborough, which is the north tip of the South Island. Region 2, degree days, there you go. We've talked about that before. This would be a mean temperature in January or July of around 19.9 to 21.3. This is where we have the later ripening Cabernet Sauvignon, some Chardonnay here as well, Merlot, Semillon, Syrah, Bordeaux, Alsace, Yarra, and Franklin. So Franklin River in Western Australia, Yarra Valley down in Victoria, just north of Melbourne. Region 3, the increase of degree days there. The mean January-July temperature is 21.4 to 22.8. Garnacha, Barbera, Tempranillo, Syrah, so more Mediterranean and sort of warmer continental climate grapes. Clare Valley in South Australia, Lower Hunter, Rioja, and Piemonte, of course. Region 4, Carreñan or Mazuelo, Sanso, Mourvedre, Tempranillo, and then you've got things like a lot of Australian places here, plus Montpellier, which is the city in the heart of the Languedoc area. So that is down in the south of France. Region 5, in excess of 2,220. This is over 24.3 degrees Celsius. Primitivo, the early ripening, just because it's in a really warm place, but Nero d'Avola, Palomino, Fiano. So this is, of course, is many parts of southern Italy, Greek islands, Jerez for Palomino, for example, as well. So there you are. So yes, that's your MJT. And then we have something called the GST, so the growing season temperature. So this is a model that uses the mean temperature of the whole of the growing season. And again, these temperatures are grouped into climatic bands ranging from cool to hot. It is very, very closely correlated to GDD, and it is easier to calculate, very easy to map out. So you take, of course, your growth season, and then you use the average temperature during that growth season. Now, those of you that have sort of pre-read your WSET or even studied the level 3 will know that this is actually the model that WSET also employs when it is talking about its major climate types. So when it is discussing things like cool continental or moderate maritime or warm maritime, those prefixes, which are the warmth factors, so that's cool, moderate, warm, and hot, are all in terms of the growing season temperature, the average growing season temperature, which is something I'll put up into the next presentation in a bit greater detail. Okay, so next time around, we will be looking at the Köppen climate classification, which is over 100-year-old today, but that brings into play, of course, things like maritime, continental, and things like that, Mediterranean, and so on, and then talking in greater detail about the GST, so the average growing season temperature, which is often affixed to that macroclimatic type. So that part 2 will only be available to the members of my e-learning portal. That's at winewithjimmy.com. So please go ahead there and subscribe if you wish to look at those videos. If you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, please do get in touch via the social media, as always, that you see at the bottom of every slide, or at that website on the slide there. You can go and contact us there, or you can comment at the bottom of this video on the YouTube channel if you wish to put your comments in there. Rightio, I think that is everything. If you do find yourself in London, come down to South London to Streatham Wine House and come and see us. It'd be great to see you for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Take care of yourselves.